Dr. Peter Williams. He's an ecologist, and he's going to tell us all about the work he does, and we have some questions for him.
All right. So, hi, my name is Peter Williams. I'm a research ecologist at Michigan State University, and I study ecology, which is how plants and animals interact with each other and with their environment. So I do a lot of work in the tropics and tropical rainforests, thinking about how animals interact with plants, how plants interact with their environment, kind of all of these different big picture things.
Wonderful. Well, awesome. Well, we are so excited to hear about your work and hear about how you became a scientist. So they're going to start by asking some questions, and if you aren't able to hear them, we'll have them get closer and speak up. Okay? So, Delaney, want to get started?
How do you collect science data?
How do I collect science data? That's a great question. So the main way that I collect my data is going out into the field, out into forests, and measuring things. And so I had a project where I set up these camera traps, and then I had animals walk by the cameras, and I used that data to see which animals were there. And then I also looked at each camera. I walked out there and I measured what fruit was around the camera to see if there was some kind of connection between what animals were at the cameras and whether there was fruit around the camera.
Wow. Oh, that's pretty awesome. So you go out there and set up cameras. So is that a similar type of camera to like a deer camera someone might use?
Yep. It's very similar to like a game cam or a trail cam that someone might put in their backyard if they live out in the country to see kind of what animals are around.
Very cool.
But I was getting, monkeys and some pheasants and porcupines and some animals that you might not find in Iowa.
That's pretty awesome. They were wondering where you are right now.
So right now I'm actually in, I live in Michigan, but right now I'm in Pittsburgh. I happen to be helping my fiance move. She's also a scientist.
What kind of scientist is she?
She is an evolutionary biologist.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
A lot of her work is in a lab.
Learning about adaptations right now,
yeah.
So they would kind of know about that.
Yeah, so she does a lot of work in a lab, looking at DNA and looking kind of within an animal. I work more outside, thinking about how the whole animal works with other animals and the environment.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. Very cool.
And I have another answer to that question of where I get my data, because besides going out and measuring these things myself, there's also a lot of scientists that have already measured things that then share it with other scientists. And so I'm able to use this data that has been collected by many people all around the world and analyze things on a global scale. So I'm able to take, say camera trap images from scientists working in Africa or South America or anywhere. And these scientists share their data so that people can learn from each other.
Yeah, we do that. I'm Professor Gizmo. I also share my data.
Thanks for reminding me. Okay, next up, Evelyn, you want to ask a question?
What's your favorite plant?
My favorite plant? Oh, so my favorite plant is, there's a tree, and its scientific name is Bryobalaenops lanceolata. And I don't know if it has a simpler name, but it's found in Malaysia where I worked. It's a really tall tree. So it's, like 100 feet tall, maybe more. And what I liked about it was it's a beautiful tree. It's got this really straight stem, and then at the very top has a bunch of leaves sticking out. But what I liked about it was every 2 to 10 years, it produces seeds. So not every year like most plants, but just every so often, huge flood of seeds. And what I was interested in was then all the animals say, oh, this is a great year. I have to eat all of these seeds, but only once every several years. And so that was really interesting to me to study And so I like this tree because of how it looks and because it's interesting to study.
Sounds like an awesome tree. We'll have to look that up. Wonderful. Owen, do you have a question about trees you want to ask him?
How long have you been in school?
Oh, he wants to know how long you've been in school.
So I'm working at a school now, but now I'm not a student. Now I'm just doing research. I went to school through high school. After high school, I went to college for 4 years. And then I went to grad school and studied as a PhD student for 5 years. So I guess in total, that would be 5 plus 9 plus 12. It's a lot of years.
Yeah, that is a long time. Very cool. Okay, Reed.
What's your favorite memory of Irving?
My favorite memory of Irving. Ooh. You know, well, a lot of my favorite memories were playing on the playground outside during recess.
That's everybody's favorite.
Well, it's such a good playground. That's great.
Yeah. I was in school a while ago, so I don't know if you still do it, but I remember when I was in Irving, we had Wacky Olympics.
They do field day now. Yeah, they
Field
call
day?
it. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And you do lots of fun stuff. You guys love field day, don't you? Yeah. Jasper,
Yeah.
do you have a question?
Do you miss Indianola?
Do I miss Indianola? I do, but I like to go back and see my family because my family still lives in Indianola. So I think the last time I was in Indianola was April to see my family.
So you get back quite a bit. Well, that's wonderful. Okay, Rhett.
What was your favorite school to go to?
Oh, and so I wondered if you went to a couple different schools. What was your favorite?
I liked all of them. And well, you must know that I like school because I did school for so many years. But I think my favorite is for my PhD at University of Montana. And the reason I liked it were for a few reasons. So one, I was out in Montana where there were a lot of mountains and it was really beautiful and I could hike and be in nature. So I really enjoyed that. And also what I liked about the very end of doing a PhD was I wasn't just taking classes, I was studying what I wanted to study and doing my own research. And so that was really fun to not just follow what the teacher said, but be able to teach myself.
Oh, awesome. Okay, Brenton.
What's your favorite habitat to research?
My favorite habitat to research is definitely tropical rainforests. And the reason is because there are so many species. You know, for example, if you had, let's say you had an area of forest the size of Buxton Park, that is full of trees. There are more species in that one area than in all of Iowa, and almost more than the whole US. So you have so many different plants, so many different animals, so many different insects, birds, mammals, everything in a small area that it's really, really fun to study. And it's a nice place, it's warm. There's a lot of cool things.
Well, that sounds awesome. How many of you guys want to visit a tropical rainforest someday? Yeah, and one of these guys, he actually wants to be an ecologist right there. He wants to do art. He wants to be an ecologist and an artist. Okay.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah, well, you could be both. You could be.
Yes, it's just too hard.
Brianne, what is your question?
How close have you been to a poisonous or venomous animal?
How close have I been to a poisonous or venomous animal? So let me think about this. One time I was working on a sage grouse project in Idaho, and I heard a rattlesnake a few feet away from me. So that was a little dangerous, but it rattled at me, so I knew to stay away.
Have you ever seen a poison dart frog?
They're wondering about a poison dart frog. Have you seen one of those?
I have seen a poison dart frog. Actually, just earlier this year, I was working in Colombia, and I saw a poison dart frog on the forest floor while I was measuring trees.
Okay.
But I have another answer about, so not poisonous, but dangerous. When I was working in Malaysia, there was one time where I got a little too close to an elephant. And elephants are lovely, but they're very big. And so they can be very dangerous. So we heard them, I was working with a few people, and we heard them rustling in the forest, and we ran away as fast as we could.
Wow, that is so cool that this is your work. He does this. This is his job, to go to all these places and get to see all this cool stuff. Okay, Miss Colby, and he already answered that one. So how about we do your other one?
What experiments do you do?
So do you do any experiments in your type of science?
Yeah, sometimes. So a lot of what I do is just observing what is in nature and trying to understand it. But because unlike a lab, nature is really complicated and it's hard to do experiments. But I have done some experiments. And so I had an experiment I did where I set these seeds out in the forest, and some seeds I put little fences around so animals wouldn't eat them. And some seeds I sprayed a fungicide so that the fungus wouldn't infect it, and some I sprayed an insecticide so the bugs wouldn't eat it. And so this was an experiment I did in the forest, and then I was able to see, are there differences in how many seeds survive in my different experimental treatments?
That's really cool. That's a cool one. We actually do something kind of similar with pill bugs later on.
Oh,
so
cool.
That'll be awesome. Okay, Delaney.
If you weren't an ecologist, what would you be?
If I weren't an ecologist, what would I do? You know, so one thing that I like to do with my free time is music. So when I was in college, I studied ecology, but I also studied music. I played bass. I started learning in 5th grade orchestra at Irving. And then I played that in college and was a music minor. So I still like to play it in my free time. So maybe if I wasn't an ecologist, I would try to be a musician.
Me too. I really prefer opera. That's what I really enjoy. That's why I chose Irving for my sabbatical, because Des Moines Metro Opera is right across the street.
Okay, Evelyn.
What plants are poisonous for you?
You mean
What
like when
plants?
it's like this is rainforest work? Yeah.
Yeah. So there weren't many poisonous plants where I worked, which was really nice. You know, if you're walking around Iowa, you have to be careful about poison ivy. But where I worked, there wasn't poison ivy. So I didn't have to really worry about going through the trees. Sometimes, though, there were some thick bamboo that were so difficult to get through that I had to have a giant knife to cut my way through.
Oh, that sounds
But the
fun.
plants, in general, the plants were really nice. There were some bugs that were not so nice.
Very good. Okay. Well, how about we do 3 more? Oh, and you got yours? You prefer? Is it a tree question?
Do you like evergreen?
Evergreen or deciduous? Some of them have been learning about the main types of trees, so they're wondering which kind you prefer.
It's a tough question because I like both, but I think I prefer deciduous because I like the colors in fall.
Mhm. Okay. Rhett. Or read.
Have you ever studied frogs?
Have you ever studied frogs?
Have I ever studied frogs? I have never studied frogs, but I have met some people that studied frogs. And so I knew someone when I was working in Malaysia that they would go at night with a headlamp and a net, and they would go and they'd look around and try to catch frogs.
Do they catch any tree frogs? Yeah.
Like tree frogs. No, but where I worked in, I didn't see one, but in Malaysia, there's a type of frog that's called a flying frog, and it uses the webbing of its hands to glide from trees like a flying squirrel.
Squirrel. Did you see any toads?
Did I see any toads? I can't remember seeing any toads. I've seen some in the US, but not in my field work on my job.
Right now in Iowa, we're calling it toad season because there are so many toads everywhere. So that's on their mind right now. Okay, Jasper, do you want to ask one more? Then maybe he can give us a little bit of advice for becoming a scientist. Do you have
What is the most interesting plant you researched?
The most interesting plant that I've researched. Well, first I'm going to say that I didn't always study plants. I actually started studying animals. And when I was younger, I wasn't interested in plants at all. But when I was studying animals, I was thinking about how animals eat plants. And so then I had to study plants because it was so important. So I've been interested in animals my whole life, but plants are actually more recent. So I haven't studied as much of them. But in terms of the weirdest, was that the question? The
most interesting? Yep.
The most interesting plant?
That one. Yeah. The seed one sounded pretty cool.
Yeah. I think some of the trees with the seeds, those are, and the seeds too, they're like maple seeds that, flutter down and they kind of spin, except they're huge. So some of them, the seed is this big and they have these wings like that, and they fly down from the tree way up.
Wow, we're gonna have to look that tree up. We're gonna have to get that name and look that up. Okay. Yeah.
When yours that the seeds fall, or else you're gonna get it gut out.
So do you have any final advice or anything you want to tell these budding scientists? We are really creating a culture here in Indianola of growing scientists. Do you have any advice for these guys?
Mm-hmm. I would say that being a scientist means having an open mind and trying new things, and even if they don't work, that's part of the job. I've tried a lot of things that haven't worked, but I do it because I'm trying to learn something new, and so it takes a lot of trying, but you just have to keep at it.
Well, this was wonderful. Thank you for that, Dr. Williams. And we are just honored that you were able to join us today and have one of our Indianola alumni, Irving alumni, join us. And we might have to keep your fiance in mind. The fifth graders study DNA later in the year, so we might have to interview her as well.
Okay.
Well, what do we tell him?
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you later.
Thank you so much. We have to say you have one of the coolest jobs ever. And we're grateful you do this work and help us learn things. Okay, talk soon. Thank you, Peter.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.